Well, dear Boolaws, don't we have something in store for you today?
Let me into my zone. Please don't let me into my zone. 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 Please don't let.
Welcome back to Krown's Crypto Cave, flying blind with just one camera as camera number 2's battery is exhausted, so I need to go get an external battery. That's another conversation for another time, perhaps. Oh well. Anyways, plenty to talk about today. Even though Bitcoin didn't even move outside of the short-term range yesterday, like not even talking about the medium or the long-term range, or the macro for that matter, but even the short-term range was not even broken, which it still lines up with our analysis that we've been looking at for the last couple of days, that we are looking for resolution on the greater time frames, probably within, I suppose a little bit less than a week now. So we'll be following up on that. Of course, I also want to say I'll be on Twitch today as well as, well, the news from the doctor is, how do I put this? Well, don't expect the Twitch streams to stop anytime soon. I'll put it that way. And the long ones, that is, because of course, once I get fully back to better, I will still be doing Twitch streams, just maybe like instead of 8 hours, maybe like 4 or 5 hours, you know, but we'll see. Anyways, I'll start that a few hours after I post this video. Just need to eat some morning steak, of which I'm really, really excited about. And, what else do we want to say? I think, oh yeah, the link's in the description below. Let's talk about the Krown trading application, which is right in front of your very face right here at app.krowntrader.net. It's free. Take advantage of it. It's all good, or at least, you know, you're more than welcome to. And we still see that the open interest is kind of hovering, still not above 700 million, but not below about 600 million. So we are still within the context of that short-term frames range, which is further verified by the open interest reading, as we'd expect it to really have a massive differential between what we saw over the range of the last few days when we do resolve this current range. On top of that, all major market metrics are more or less the same. We see crypto fear and greed index going up a little bit here from a 15 to an 18, not all that different. Still is the one thing in the back of my mind saying, hey Krown, you know, maybe it's actually not a time to be too damn bearish, because this market's quite literally doubled off the lows, and people are still really, really fearful. I mean, that is by fucking definition the wall of worry. Anyways, we'll get into that in just a second here. But I want to talk about something, and I want to kind of start off this video with something that I typically don't do, but I want to point this out. There's a great account on crypto Twitter. Now, I don't really follow too many accounts here, but this is one of the accounts that I do follow. His name is Hoska. I don't know exactly how to pronounce it. I don't know if he probably doesn't watch these videos, but if he does, I apologize for butchering your name, but he brought up a really, really good point here. So a lot of people like to talk about the Fed printing money, right? The Fed just fucking, you know, running the money printers amok, and inflation, right? Well, funnily enough, we actually have the same thing kind of going on in crypto right here, as he's done a nice case study, and I thought that this was really, really interesting and also makes a lot of sense. Anyways, just as Jerome Powell has been fucking printing money like it's his job, because it is his job, all of the stable coins have basically been printing as well. I mean, you can look at right in over here. Tether printed or increased their supply 40%, 2 billion. I mean, that's kind of insane. USDC, I believe that's Coinbase's stablecoin. That's 55% increase. What is this? BUSD, I believe that's Binance, plus 80. I mean, this is just insanity right here. So, you know, at the end of the day, it's very funny because we sometimes get caught in our own echo chambers. And while people like to point towards the Fed printing and everything, it's like, well, let's see what's going on in the space that we're typically focused on here and see if that makes sense. And as you can see, well, it's not so innocent either now, is it? Now, again, I am a believer in Bitcoin long term, but at the end of the day, have to call a spade, and it is important to be well and balanced here, just like Fox News and also CNN by that matter as well. If you're not American, you probably don't get that because they're not fucking balanced at all. They're both just their own propaganda networks, essentially. Anyways, let's go on over into actually price action charts with that in mind, and still, you know, kind of hovering within this region where we don't really have a big break. We don't really have a big, we don't really have the range is tight, but the big break still yet to come is the words that I'm trying to say. I did struggle a little bit last night with sleep, so I do apologize if I'm mixing my words a little bit here. Let's go over to our Gdx chart, the chart that we've been following for quite some time now, and let's go down to our lower term timeframes and talk about, well, the lower term. And I still stick with what I've been saying overall for the short, medium, and long term. Short term, I am more immediately bearish as long as we are wrangled and living below, especially on an open and close basis, the 4-hour 200 exponential moving average right here. That's the purple moving average at 69.50-ish region. region. Great number, the first two. And I am more medium and long-term bearish as long as we are especially below about 7,300 to 7,400 right here. Now, this guy right here is only relevant to the lower term timeframes. Even though I do have it kind of plotted out, I don't have a blue box in there, but we can put one in. Peace and prosperity if you are a little bit on the boo law side. And if Bitcoin does close above the 200 exponential moving average, again about 69.50, especially on an open and close basis, I would look for another $200 rally back up to this region, and likely it does get extended all the way to our prior toppy top area right here, the tippy top, as some might say. That's where the higher term timeframes could really change around if Bitcoin especially closes a weekly or especially a monthly above this $7,300 pivot right here. I would look for a move and extension all the way up here towards the 78 to 70 or 7,900 to 80 to 8,000ish region right here, of which that would coincide with all kinds of resistances. Most importantly, well, maybe not. I don't really think that there's a degree of importance here, but still kind of running this upside resistance right here of this proverbial rising channel, also meeting the downturn resistance coming in from our February highs in 2020, this current year. And on top of that, this blue box, which correlates with this order block from a historical standpoint, not just from this early March breakdown right here, but also from our breakout out of this last accumulation zone going back to late 2019. So I do like that area overall, and I'm sure it lines up with some major massive fib. In fact, let's just throw one on right now for sake of thoroughness, just in case if it actually did happen. I'm really not actually necessarily even looking for that to get hit, but we do see, well, actually we don't really see anything in there. It's kind of like sidestep in the mall. Let's see what happens if we use Wix. If we use Wix, we do see the 618 would actually get it. So, or sorry, yes, the 618 right around a few ticks below about 8,000 would get it. So I do like that overall for Confluence if Bitcoin did want to take that next leg up to the upside, but I do hold my reservations. And like I said, as long as Bitcoin is being held below, especially this baby right here on the 4 hour, the 200 exponential moving average on the 4 hour, I am overall bearish, more immediately speaking, with looking for a resolution on, at the very least, I really want to see at the very least a 4 hour total closing below about 6,700. 12 hour or daily would really make me a lot more excited for that move. But the reason why I look at this pivot as very important is because as long as we are below the 200 exponential moving average, the more inevitable, we're just going to play out that death cross, which the 4 hour is the lowest time frame that I've seen in Bitcoin land to kind of hold a decent amount of weight. To put this in perspective, anytime that we've gotten both the golden cross and the death cross, price action typically does follow through. And usually, I shouldn't say usually, but I'll actually show examples of pretty much always, although I really don't like using that word. Anytime we get a fake out like this, there's a pretty specific signature. So we'll go over that right now. But looking at this right here, technically we are death crossed on the 4 hour. And of course, as long as we're below the 200 exponential moving average, it is inevitable that, it's not going to get golden crossed, of course, just by the way that moving averages are calculated. Anyways, going back throughout the annals of history, we do see the last death cross running over here, bringing us all, it's not the best timer right here, especially when price action was very far away. That's a little bit different than what we're doing dealing with right here. Fair enough. But still gets the momentum incredibly well, going all the way from essentially this high right here, a little bit above 9,100, all the way down to, this is a little bit of a farce. I would say it'd be more reasonable to just even look at this low right here, which is still very much relevant and a more than $1,000 trade, almost I wouldn't say immediately, but within the next week or so. Before that, we got the golden cross happening right in over here. Very, very lovely one, efficacious as can be, going all the way from about 76.50 to 10.5. So pretty damn good. Same thing right in over here. In fact, this one very reminiscent of what we're kind of doing right now. Gets a death cross. And that forces us all the way back down from about 8,800 to 6,600, so a $2,000 move right there. This one over here, even though it was, I would consider this one a failed one, but even buying the next test of the 55, which again, you're not supposed to just fucking go into it as soon as it crosses. There is a little bit of a method to this madness. Would still giving you about a 7% move to the upside, but I would still consider this one a failure. Again, within the context of the greater scheme of things. What really starts to get interesting is on this last phase shift up that we saw from late 2019 all the way at the 5-digit mark, when Bitcoin was consolidating for about 3 months and then broke down in September. You'll see plenty of one-offs here. You get a death cross right here going all the way from about 10.5 down to 9.1. In this one, is it failed? Is it not failed? more than $1,000 moves, it's hard to kind of make the argument that that's failed. But in the context of those greater moves, I would say that it's, not necessarily on par with them. This one giving you from signal given to next low about 12% move to the downside. After that, get a little bit of a one-off right here again to the upside. This is kind of telling you that we're in a decision phase. 15% up from signal given to the next high, but still, I would consider that a fake out actually as well. And then what do we have on over here? Well, we get another death cross, and that pretty much puts it all the way down, and we actually don't get golden cross until about $4,000 later, until the low right on over here, or $3,000 or $4,000 lows, whatever it is. Anyways, this is what I want to focus on right here. There are several attempts where you do see that a golden cross is hinted at, and this is what I want to focus on for a second, as this is a classic way that the more sophisticated bots and algos of any market, that I've seen, kind of fuck around and bait the lesser sophisticated bots and algos, and by the extension, less sophisticated traders who front run these sorts of signals, getting a little bit too excited before confirmation is had. And then what happens? Baits it. We don't actually get the cross. I mean, you can kind of say that they're right on top of each other, and then dumps it in their face after multiple times. And that's just essentially, generated liquidity for themselves. And once they got all the liquidity that they can find, dump it all the way back down. Of course, we could go back through prior examples before this, but same sort of thing applies, especially back on over here before the last big dump of 2018. You see several hints, 1, 2, 3, even 4 right here before the inevitable dooms drop, and that one about 50%, an absolute catastrophe for Bitcoin boulas. Anyways, like I said, while I am overall bearish, especially from a short, medium, and higher term time frame picture, as long as we're below 69.50, doesn't mean that we can't get back above there. It's just the pivots change my bias on this market and change my trading behavior. For right now, I'm still holding my short from about 7,200. I plan to cover it if Bitcoin does get above about $7,000, especially on a closing basis. Even 69.50 probably does it for me. I'd probably close some of it, or cover with options. And right now, we do have to remember that we are still within the confines of this massive rising channel off the lows. Do you want to call it a rising channel? Do you want to call it a rising wedge? I don't care what you want to call it. It's the implication is the same, a redistribution pattern, and it does imply a measure move if it is actually broken, which I wouldn't really consider it broken until we get a daily total closure below about 6,700 to be more conservative. For the more aggressive traders, you could probably use 68, I suppose, now, because it is rising rather rapidly. And now to initiate a measure move all the way back down to about 4,900. Now, I do think it's, anytime you get like more than $1,000 measure move, I think it's a little bit lofty to just expect that, it's just going to go straight on down there, I do think that at the very least, lower term time frames would bounce along these blue boxes, of which 6,400 an area of interest. Then we got 59, then 56, and then yes, all the way down to about 49. And could they reverse it as well? Yeah, possible, but I want to see it in real time. So at the end of the day, game of patience here, and all momentum oscillators are starting to get situated now to really formulate my bias to looking for a resolution of this sooner rather than later. However, before we get into that, let's actually look at let's actually look at just the more stock standard type things. We do see the volume signature is getting very, 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 very mature by essentially kind of forcing itself into an apex, which will suggest a resolution date in less than a week now, around the 21st or the 22nd of April this month. We're on the 15th day. Again, my English probably not going to be all that good. It's the only language that I speak though, so you're fucked. Anyways, looking at historical volatility percentile, I do believe that is actually precipitating what the volume signature would be naturally showing you anyways, as it is a derivative of price action. So it's a little, it's going to be a little bit faster. And what do we see here? We see something very interesting. We see a very obvious curtailing and contraction phase going all the way from when? March 13th, March 12th, 13th, down to a pitter patter right on over here at end of March. And we could actually throw a nice trend line in there. I guess I already got it in there. And that accurately gets this whole rising channel going on from, again, right here, the low at about March 13th. It's not going to look right on a 4 hour, by the way. It's, you need to be looking at it on a daily. And then kind of coming to a conclusion right here. And what do we see after that? Now we see a change in behavior. We see that once again, historical volatility percentile is remaining above the moving average, and more importantly, gaining momentum in the volatility read, which is very bizarre way of saying that. It's basically just, it's trending to the upside again. We're in a fucking expansion phase. What it would suggest. It's basically telling you that this expansion phase is coming during a phase of a downtrend, especially on this time frame, as major moving average switch into a bearish posturing. Now let's look at momentum oscillators and come up with a little bit more on top of this. And what do we look at on the daily? Oh no, daily Stokes down, and daily Stokes do have this lovely trend line coming in right around there, which would be coming around the edge of the bearish control zone. However, that leaves a lot of space to be filled up. Also, something that I haven't really been talking too much about, and you know what? I think I've been a little bit too hard on this indicator, the good old MACD, the McDonald's. I think that the reason why I kind of gave it shit before is because I don't think that most people use it properly. But it is actually showing a very classic signature right here. So on the whole drop from like February to March, we saw an increase of momentum to the downside, right? Then the inevitable dreams drops happened. It was an incredibly intense move. So it's natural that you're gonna pop back up and have kind of an equal but opposite reaction, just kind of account for it. And what happens after that? You come up to the zero read, and when you come up to the zero read and then start putting in bearish divergence on the other side, and really take a moment to kind of like look at this, because we're increasing to the downside. Then on the kind of proverbial bounce up, the momentum is just waning to the upside. Momentum being gained to the downside here, momentum waning to the upside right here. What I'd be expecting is perhaps another bounce up to meet this trend line, at which point I would actually, at the very least, look for a test up to the $7,300 to $7,400 region. And if that does get rejected, that'll be a pretty damn good signal that we are going to be headed much, much lower. And by the same token, if it does get above $7,300 to $7,400, perhaps that next spike up comes around the $8,000 region, as we were looking at, as that's the next kind of major area. But for now, just with this coming up to the zero read, as Bitcoin essentially just tests, our higher term time frame resistances right around the weekly 21x benchmark average, and also kind of the last accumulation zone that we saw in late 2019, while still getting rejected below there, I do believe that does offer up, more of a bearish look on this, as long as we're living below that pivot, the bias for myself has to be bearish. Of course, it's not financial advice. I'm not a financial advisor. I'm just happy to share, what I'm thinking in these exact sort of same situations. And you can take that as you will. Take whatever you liked, discard whatever you don't like, and then leave a mean and nasty comment, because that's the best way to be doing it. Anyways, so what I'm looking at right here is a very classical signature where you come up to the next level of major resistance, come up to the zero read, and then hint at a cross to the downside. Now, we have obviously not seen that cross to the downside just yet, and just using that in that very remedial way of looking for cross up or good, cross down bad, is completely the wrong way to be looking at this. But this cross down would very likely come with a slew of consequences, because we'd very likely be living below, for the first time, the yellow 20-minute exponential average right on over here for the first time in the last couple of weeks, while also, more importantly, breaking a very massive support trend line coming in back on over from our March 13 lows, which is also correlated with this nice blue box right here. So if that does happen, that essentially tells us that, well, we are now once again gaining momentum to the downside as we break major supports, and all momentum also just turn back down once again. That is essentially saying that this was, well, what kind of the open interest is suggesting as well. This was just one massive shorts closing move, and if bears want to put back on their positions, they have plenty of dry ammo to go in dry on these bula bung holes. And technically speaking, there's a measure move much, much lower, and I do think that could be further. That those lower targets could certainly further be or lowered over time, but I'd want to see something else kind of come about with price action. What I also think is interesting is that this target would be coming in exactly with our last prior low, right around about 4,800 on a closing basis, which is interesting because at that point you would naturally have a chance to make bullish divergence. And as we've seen in the past, we've never seen Bitcoin bottom on a macro scale or even like a major scale, like a major move like this one right here. This is not a macro move, but it is a major move without bullish divergence at the very least on a daily. So going back on over here, we see 1, 2 drives, boom, big move up, 1, 2, 3 drives right here, big move up. These aren't even macro lows, they're just major lows. We do see a macro low right on over here from December 2018. Jesus Christ, man, I'm massively struggling with my words right now. But actually this one has 1, 2, 3 sorry, well, I'm on a 2-day right now. That's why it doesn't look right. Even though it still actually does work out. We get 1, 2, 3, 4 drives low, yeah, and get that bullish divergence. All these drives right on over here in 2018. even though they weren't macro lows, they were major lows, and they all have at least 2 drives of bullish divergence. And of course, going back before that, well, I guess this chart doesn't have it as much, but we've looked at it in long-term analysis videos a million goddamn times. And of course, in 2014, 2015 macro low, yes, of course, there's bullish divergence there as well. And for the ones precipitating that beforehand, and I urge you to go check for yourself. Don't trust, verify, all that good shit. And more importantly, we also do see daily RSI living below the exponential. I don't think that that's a death sentence in and of itself, especially the way it's situated right now. But I want to line this up now with the reverse Stochh and reverse RSI EMA cross and look at if that aligns with this level as well. Keeping in mind that this is also very likely to come in line with a MACD cross and also a major structure as well as just your lovely blue box. Anyways, looking at the reverse Stochh cross, we're obviously down right now on the daily, but by the same token, we won't cross back up to the upside on that until Bitcoin gets back up about 7,200, especially on a closing basis. For the reverse RSI cross, we'd actually have to close today's daily doodle back above 6,900. So that does say that there's immediate pressure onto the downside from a daily closing perspective. Now we need to go down to a 12-hour and see if that's going to, if we can come up with a more close range. And of course, looking at the 12-hour Stochs, we do see that they're up right now. They're going to be testing the edge of the bearish control zone relatively soon. Actually, in fact, probably sometime today on the next closure. But what does this also tell us? It tells us that with the Stochh crossing down, once again, we'd have to close this next 12-hour doodle back below about 6,750. So that is damn close to that 6,700 level that I have outlined earlier. And that's, again, kind of the domino of effects that really suggests that this area is a big, big area. Because if we once again be breaking the lovely blue box that has currently been valiantly holding this price action up, for like the last week or so, and then momentum would be turning back again in that direction, plus the MACD, plus RSI, plus structure, plus, I would expect open interest to really go above like 700 million. At that point, I want to see this spike up well above 700 million to really confirm that as a breakdown, plus pattern. Whether you want to call this a rising channel or rising wedge, whatever the fuck you want to call it, same thing. And also we see historical volatility percentile on the 12-hour very much ready. Now I do think that this can take a little bit longer. We can obviously make the same sort of trend line right here. In fact, I guess I already kind of have it. And this should really speak to a greater degree of a move. Now this apex would be coming in about 10 days, or sorry, the apex obviously is like early. What the fuck? It's snowing here. It's like a blizzard right now, by the way, in Finland. Anyways, it would actually have an apex in early May, but that would suggest that we do get a very likely break on the greater formation within the next 10 days or so, and maybe even sooner than that. The more and more mature that it gets in here, the more and more likely it gets to break. That's the closest thing that I can come up with that can actually time a move. It's literally a blizzard outside right now. This is insane. It's fucking April 15th. What the fuck, man? Anyways, okay, cool. What else do we want to look at? We can go back down to the lower term timeframes and look at the momentum oscillators here. I do want to keep in mind that 4-hour Stochs are very much up, but where would that reverse Stochh cross happen? Oh, 6750-ish region. That sounds familiar. And by the way, historical volatility percentile is primed for a nice short-term move at the very least. What about the 3-hour? 6850, in fact. So that one's going to be turning down sooner than the other higher term timeframes. What about the 2-hour? This one's actually technically down right now and would cross back up to the upside above 6950. So that does help confirm that short-term range back above there. So yes, I still would target a move towards at the very least 7150 if we do start closing 4-hour dildos above 6950-ish region, especially on an open and close basis. And hourly Stochs will cross back on down to the downside, actually below 6850. So the range is tightening up, which tells us that a resolution is getting closer and closer. It is very much mature. And I do believe, lower term time frames, say 6850 is where the floodgates open. I don't agree with that, but I'm always right, and math is always wrong. So no, just kidding. But the medium and higher term time frames suggest about 6700, 6750 on the more conservative end. So I do, I do err on the side of caution here, especially when we are going to be looking at a relatively big move. Anytime that we've seen historical volatility percentile get this low in the single digits for Bitcoin, even on the 4-hour hour, we do get, decent sized moves. I'm talking like $500 to $1,000 moves relatively fast. Now, this is all going to be further extrapolated by our 2-day dildo time frame, which we've been looking at quite a bit here. And the way that I play this is still the same. As long as we have the 2-day dildo death cross, which is, by the way, gaining more and more momentum away from each other, we see more divergence from the 55 to the 200 and living below the 21 exponential average. I play that bearish as long as it's below the 21. Doesn't mean it's always going to be right, but it does suggest, Jesus, what's going on over here? Sorry, my phone's going crazy. What the fuck is going, what is this, sir? Sir? What's going on? All right, whatever. Oh, by the way, I forgot to make an announcement about the Discord. Hey, if you're in the TA program, the options program, or the Jewel, you don't need to go through the verification. Please do not go through the fucking verification. You're just going to make your and my life more difficult. Doesn't need to be that way. Just, you don't need to do anything. It's all good. It's all good. But for everyone else, you will have to, if you haven't already verified yourself, you're going to have to leave the server and then rejoin the server. There's a link in the description below. You can also find it at crowntrading.net for the Discord, and then you will be prompted with a direct message from our bot Sentinel named Altdentifier, ALTDENTIFIER, I believe it is. I don't know if I'm spelling properly. But you'll be run through a very simple verification. I know it's kind of annoying. I know it's a little bit inconvenient, but it is for the better of the community. And I also kind of like that it seemed to have really turned this place back into an intimate conversation. I feel like I kind of like the smaller community a little bit more, to be honest with you. You get to know people better. Anyways, back onto the actual charts themselves right here. Okay, so with Bitcoin, looking at the 2-day, we do see that all these major moving averages are of course in a bearish posture, but more important, or just as important, they also have negative slopes as they gain more and more divergence away from each other. And as long as Bitcoin's closing 2-day dildos, especially below the 21, I am more immediately bearish. That also means if Bitcoin were to pop back up and close above the 21 today, I probably actually would at the very least target a move towards 73, 74, and realistically, where's the 200 exponential average right here, 7,800? That sounds pretty damn close to our topside blue box around the $8,000 region. But going back through the annals of history here, same thing, golden cross, glory times from 7,000 to 14, death cross, death times, death and destruction times from 2018 in September. Right on over here, Bitcoin slowly but surely grinds it down. And from cross to dooms drop is about 2 months, from early September to early November. So September, October, November, 3 months in fact. And it slowly grinds down below the 21. Yes, we do get a test up to the 55. That's why I do kind of leave the door open for a test higher on Bitcoin price action right now. But at the end of the day, as long as we're living below those sorts of major pivots, I do have a hard time of being macro bullish. Doesn't mean that it can't happen. Again, just need to see things happen first and foremost. And then going back to 2014, 2015, lovely death cross right on over here for the Bitcoin bears. And Bitcoin very, very far away actually from price action from that cross. So you get a nice, floaty price action like this. We do pop back up and test at the very least the 55, even the 200 right here. And then on an open and close basis, loses the 21 once again. And again, from cross happening to doom's drop was about 2 months, it looks like, about 2 months. And then, of course, another 53% move to the downside. We see the same thing right on over here as well in 2018. I didn't measure it out, but we've done this a million goddamn times now, so you probably already know. And just, playing with numbers here, if we were to shave off, say, 50% off the price action, where would that put us down around? That put us down around about 3,500. That's very, very similar to our accumulation phase in early 2019, late 2018, which is also akin with a very important major moving average that you don't really see too often in cryptocurrency land, but I do believe that's going to take more and more precedence as time goes on, and that's showing the 377 down around 3650, which is also interesting because we actually do see a gap on CMEs down around the 3550-ish range, down around here as well, going all the way back to February of 2019. So all of those areas I do like. It is of interest, but like I said, I don't really have anything else pointing down towards that region other than those, and I think that's more like analyst type shit. I'm not like trading for that right now. The difference between a trader and an analyst, of course. Looking at CMEs here, we do technically have a gap to the upside, to be fair. So Bitcoin did pop back up to 7,300. That's really not out. It's really not rocking the boat too hard or anything like that. But while we are here on the on CME futures, I do want to take a moment to look at what did I want to look at? Yeah, let's put on the 10 simple as well. How's this guy operating right now? Ooh, interesting. Very, very interesting. Very interesting actually here on CMEs. I do want to put an alert at yesterday's high. This is not going to, motherfucker. Hey, trading view, come on. There we go. Jesus. There's like a World War III going on outside right now. Anyways, looking at this right here, you know, Bitcoin did pop back up to 7,300, 7,400. That's completely fine. Even from like a medium time frame perspective, we do see the 55 still governing those highs, and more importantly, divergence is still happening between the death cross moving average 55 and the 200 right here. As the 21 maintains its negative slope thus far, we do see a fresh stoke cross to the downside on daily stokes right there, and we do see that daily RSI is putting in some pretty massive hidden bearish divergence here, or continuation divergence, I think is better spoken, going all the way back to this high right in over here when Bitcoin was literally above like 9,100. Now it is a little bit of it is a little bit disingenuous to look like that far back, but even looking out on a 2-day, actually we do not have that same divergence on a 2-day, so fair enough. Now the other counterpoint on this is on a 2-day we just got a fresh death cross right in over here on 2-day on 2-day CME chart, and same sort of bearish setup. In fact, I put a lot more weight on the CME chart that I do on spot, and this is a little bit more damning to myself. We also do see that 2-day stokes are actually up right now. Let's see what it take to cross them back down. We'd have to go back down below 5,600 on a closing basis, so that ain't happening right now. So actually that's could still hold in here. Fair enough. But keep an eye on it, because this is going to be a little more of a longer term time frame for that. And also curious what the 2-day for spot price action shows, as we're getting way up there, which is fine. That's actually completely fine. You know, you actually want that during your upwards moves, and you can expect that when Bitcoin has a 2x off the lows. But what's interesting about this is to cross the 2-day stokes to back on to the downside, which, by the way, we do get a closure tonight. At 8 p.m. Eastern time. All that would need to happen in order to cross those back down to the downside is a 2-day little closure below 67.71 and a half on stamp this is. So not too far away. And if that does happen, further strengthens the case that I do think Bitcoin at the very least would see back down to the very low 6,000s, upper 5,000s, probably a nice size bounce right there. And then we'll talk about more doomsy type stuff if and when that does occur. So cool. Anyways, already awesome. Good. Great. Have I scared everyone away now? Yes, probably, because it's already 31 minutes in, and well, who else has no life besides me to spend this much time looking at magic and money? Probably not too many people out there. Let's go look at traditional markets futures and see what they're operating off of. We do see that E-mini futures looking like they actually have some more upside here. So if there's another thing that makes me think that Bitcoin does have more upside, it's looking at traditional markets, which I think are still short-term bullish. Medium and long-term, I think still major questions arise. I can make a decent enough case for a low already being in, as we spoke about last week, but I wouldn't be trading for it right now. I do think that trading for the short term is fine, though. I think I still stick with what I said the other day. Probably into the 290s, 290 to 295 region, looking okay. If we can get a closure on a daily time frame above like 295 on SPY, I look for an extension into the 310ish region. Overall, I think that short term this is fine here, and I would remain. And I don't really have any reason to be even short-term bearish on this one, as long as we're above Monday's low, which is where this alert is, and that's why we have it in there at 2,700. Let's go look at Nasdaq futures as well. The Nasdaq futures is what I should have been looking at yesterday. I would have been a lot more bullish on this yesterday if I just would have looked at this chart. Nasdaq futures kind of leading the market up right now. I do think it's going to make a leap up towards the 8,900-ish region. This same thing right in over here, right? The death cross was hinted at between the green and the purple, the 55 and the 200 right there. And at the very last second, girthy green dildos shoved into this market, and I do think that we have some more upside to come at the very least short term. Now, medium and long term, again, I would still hold reservations, but just going level by level here is easy enough. As long as this one's above about 8,200, no real reason to be medium or long-term bearish. Can have some short-term downside moves. That's completely fine. Just even go down to the lower-term timeframes, which probably have some pretty massive bearish divergence. In fact, they do. So probably I would expect to pull back, maybe back down to like 85-ish region. But still, I do think that overall it's probably got some more upside here after maybe a short pullback for 85-ish. Is where I'd be looking towards. Let's go take a look at Japan, see what they're doing for today. Japan kind of, not really doing all that much. Yes, they are down right now, but I don't think that this is too problematic. I think that U.S. markets are kind of running this market right now. To be fair, we do see a lot of bearish divergence, and we also do see an hourly jewel sell signal, which does matter on traditional markets because they do trade for a lot less time than Bitcoin. So an hourly is, a relatively higher time frame. It's basically like a 4-hour in Bitcoin, I do believe. And, bearish divergence here, I actually do think has the potential to bring this back down to 19,200, but I'd really wait for U.S. markets to kind of set the, set the pace as I haven't really seen Japan lead recently. Speaking of Japan, we can look at Bitcoin versus the yen, as that has been a pretty damn good insight in the past. And Bitcoin versus yen looks obviously more bearish than U.S. Spot markets, operating below on an open and close basis below the 21 exponential moving average for the last couple days, it looks like. And looking at a weekly basis, we have a pretty bearish setup right here as well, with the 10 symbol cross the downside of the 21 and the 21 cross the downside of the 55. Put two and two together, not good, especially as Bitcoin confirms a rejection below the last sort of accumulation zone from a higher time frame scale. As long as we're below the 7,300s, which is 7,300 on spot markets for US and about 75 or 750,000 yens. It is pressure down. Doesn't mean that we can't get a test up there, but as long as we're closing weekly dollars below there, it is it is under pressure. So yeah, all right. So yeah, if there's anything that's making me think that Bitcoin does test more upside here, it's actually traditional markets, because we do see a strong correlation between the two. What else do we want to see? Let's go look at Mr. Buterin, some of the other market leaders. Mr. Buterin looks like he wants to test some upside here, maybe all the way back up to 165. Not too crazy, but anywhere above, what is this, the 11th of April's high at 166.07, I would look for an extension back up to the last high, somewhere right around about 174 region, with potential to go higher after that. The weekly actually looks a lot better than Bitcoin's, to be fair. It looks a lot better from a moving average perspective, to be in the last week closure. From a long-term perspective, obviously much worse. I mean, this is the fucking dead heartbeat chart of doom, as we quite literally have a weekly downtrend that has not been reverted since the highs at 14,000. Sorry, not 14,000, but 1,400 again. Lack of sleep, probably messing up all my words. Feel free to relegate me in the comments. I sincerely deserve it. Looking at the monthly looks absolutely atrocious as well. I mean, this is the fucking dead heartbeat chart. I mean, no real hiding from it right now. We're in a monthly downtrend as well, and have been ever since fucking 2018. What about Mrs. Litecoin? Mrs. Litecoin equally as absurdly bad. The dead heartbeat not at getting there, but not as bad. Weekly not as good as Buterin's closure, and death cross likely incoming in about 2 weeks, assuming that no major move is had above about $50, especially. It will happen, and death crosses are really good for a weekly chart to have, I believe. In cryptocurrency land. In fact, you almost never see it. That's why. Anyways, back on to Bitcoin. I don't want to paint like a very one-sided picture here. I do still want to say that, hey, I would change my short-term outlook to not bearish. If Bitcoin could close a 4-hour dildo, even above 69.50, an open and close would be great. But even just closure would make me close a lot of my short position. And I'd probably look for a move back up here to 71.50-ish region at the very least. And realistically speaking, looking at all of our other time frames, I don't see any reason why, it probably has like a short-term pullback from this region, but I would look for extension to 73, give or take about, $50 or whatever it ends up being. And that's where things could really change from the medium and higher term time frames. As if Bitcoin does start to close, especially dailies above this, make a new high above 74, I would look for extension to about 7,900, give or take, $100 there as well. So, we're kind of in limbo right now, a little bit of Bitcoin limbo, but my bias still is to the downside from a short-term perspective, as long as below this region, from a medium and long-term perspective, as long as we're below about 7,300 to 7,400, and from a macro perspective, a little bit more difficult because the macro doesn't change all that often, but if the monthly is, as long as the monthly is closing below the 21, I am not bullish from a macro perspective. The only thing, again, still that makes me a little bit more erring towards the sides of, is this a major fake out here? Is one, the massive wick up, that closure that we saw in the monthly for March. This is indicative of capitulation, which I do believe that we did see a decent amount of. Doesn't mean that we can't come back down and swipe those lows or anything, but it is it is suggesting that the low is likely in. And then also, funnily enough, the crypto fear and greed index, just because that's a classic hallmark of climbing the wall of worries. Like, everyone's super fearful. Bitcoin's fucking doubled. Like, what's, you'd expect it to be in the at least greedy, like semi-greedy zone. But on top of that, from a monthly perspective, monthly momentum also is certainly very much to the downside, and it would take a monthly closure above the 10 simple at 8,400-ish region, a little bit above 8,400-ish region, to cross those back up. By the same token, monthly RSI looking like it's kind of wanting to do what it's done on the last major lows as well, which would suggest a little bit more downside. Now, I did forget to do this, so we'll do this before we send you off. And I'll go back over to our lower term timeframes and plot out these areas, pretty much the same areas yesterday, to be fair. And we can go look at the probability chart, which is right on over here. And what do we see? If we're using an upside price target of 7,000, 39% that we actually do close the daily above that today. By the way, 6,400 has a almost 31% chance to close below today. So you've seen that go up massively from like 15% last week to 30 almost 31% today, and you've seen the above target probability go, well, that's not even actually where it would matter for the medium or higher term timeframes. Really need to look at 74, and it's really 67 for the downside. And now we actually see the flipping in the probabilities. The flipping in has happened. The above target probability, 22.25. Below target probability, a little bit less than 46%. And we've seen this absolutely shift around massively, just like we said. Sorry, that sounds fucking arrogant. I don't mean to come off like that, but this is why hesitation in this region is inherently bearish. More and more momentum also is going to turn on to the downside. It's just going to look like another failed rally. With another week of failing to break back above, especially 73 to 7,400, this will massively shift in favor of the downside, if not beforehand. So. And then the ball will be in the Bears' court. So fair enough. It's a ticking time bomb here, the way that I look at it. Anyways, that's going to do it for right now. I guess I'll briefly go back on a lower term time frames. If Bitcoin closes at 4 hour little above this area, then I'll look for this area. Blah 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 blah. You already fucking know that. I've said it a million goddamn times now over the last week. 6,700 to the downside is where I'd be looking towards. Although if you want to be a little more conservative, 6,650, especially on like a higher term time frame, or sorry, medium term time frame, like a 12 hour, 4 hour probably does do it. To be fair. Probably does do. I mean, shit, even just getting back below this low right here is probably bad enough at 67.71 and a half. That is going to start to shift a lot of the momentum also just back onto the downside. So for right now, I'm holding positions as long as we're below this region, and we'll take profit if we get back above there. And that's all that I've really planned to do. I'm going to go eat a shit ton of steak. I want to wish you well. I want to wish you the best, and the happiest as always, because, well, hopefully you got a better night's sleep than me, because I'm really starting to feel it right now. I'll be on Twitch in just a bit, and again, massive apologies for the inconvenience with regards to the Discord community, but it's all for the better. Anyways, take care, and until next time.